I'm here with Stephan Spencer. Stephan, how are you rocking the podcast?
Well, I love getting onto just in front of the camera or in front of the podcast mic and either sharing my wisdom and experience around SEO or e-commerce, online marketing, or I love getting guests on my shows to talk about like biohacking, life hacking, or marketing.
Yeah, and you, so SEO is your big topic, and I literally say it's your big topic because you wrote a really large book about SEO.
Yeah, so I co-authored the Art of SEO, which is 1,000 pages. It's seen as the Bible on SEO, and it's in its third edition. So it's a lot of work to maintain the book, but it's well worth it.
I'm sure that you have to maintain that because, SEO is constantly changing. And, it was very funny. I have to share the story about Podcast Movement. And I had a booth at Podcast Movement for Interview Connections. And Stephan was there with some people as I was packing up my booth and I was about ready to bring it to FedEx. I had this big box and he's like, "Hey, Jessica, I want to give you a copy of my book." And he hands me this 1,000-page book. And I was like, "Are you joking right now?"
It was really heavy. And did you take it or did you say I'll pass? I don't remember.
Well, I probably, because I really thought you were joking because gosh, how many of those were you carrying around the conference?
Yeah, I usually get them shipped because they are pretty heavy. Yeah. So I had probably a dozen that I handed out at that conference.
It's hilarious. And so everyone's like, "Oh, thank you for adding 5 pounds to my bag on the way home." No, but it's really funny. It worked out because I had a box that I could ship. I was shipping a box of them anyway. But so that's just a fun story. We had a really good laugh. So what is you have 2 podcasts. What are they called?
Marketing Speak and The Optimized Geek.
Marketing Speak and The Optimized Geek. And how are they different?
Well, Marketing Speak is all marketing related. I've had Jay Abraham on, all sorts of online marketers like Neil Patel, and had John Lee Dumas on. I've had Jared Spool, usability expert. So yeah, just all sorts of marketing related topics and experts. And then my other show, The Optimized Geek, is all about life transformation because I went through a big one myself. So if you go to the Optimized Geek website, which is optimizedgeek.com, you'll see on the About page a before and after of me, and you will be shocked. I think I showed you a photo of what I used to look like.
Yeah.
So I went through a big transformation. I want to share with the world what I learned and how I went through that journey and the kind of experts that I aligned myself with, joining masterminds and going to seminars and everything. Probably spent $500,000 on self-development over the last 5 years. And so I wanted to kind of distill all that into a show, but bringing the experts who made a difference in my life onto my show. So I've had Byron Katie on that, for example, Dave Asprey, the Bulletproof coffee guy, who's amazing, Dr. Daniel Amen, who wrote Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. So got some great guests.
Wow. And how are you leveraging your podcast to grow your business? Have you seen a link between the two?
Well, it's more of it opens doors for me. I don't typically get sales leads. Like I'm a consultant. I help companies like Chanel, Zappos, Bed Bath & Beyond, Sony store to get higher rankings in Google. And they're probably not listening to my podcast, those kinds of companies, but that's okay. It's a way to build relationships with really cool movers and shakers in my industry and related industries. So it's more of a kind of a tangential sort of effect.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you've gone on some podcasts as well as a guest expert. You get interviewed. Talk about how that has been, is it the same kind of thing where you're not necessarily talking directly to people that are your clients because you're working with these bigger companies? So when you're a guest expert on podcasts, is the effect kind of the same where it's, brand recognition, exposure, but not necessarily direct sales leads?
Yeah, typically. But it gets me an opportunity to get my own podcasts out there as well. And it's just part of my overall media exposure. So I've been also focusing on TV. I've gotten on 9 TV appearances this year. I got a 10th one coming up next week. It's a national one. And so this is all part of a bigger initiative. My main goal is I want to have a New York Times best-selling self-help book next year, and I want to be on Good Morning America or the Today Show. So being on podcasts, being on TV, radio, that's all part of that whole strategy. And I've been on a range of different types of podcasts. You guys have booked me on some different podcasts, ones that are about like buying, selling, building businesses, like Built to Sell. I've been on that, talking about selling my agency. me. And that was in 2010. I learned lots of lessons from that, and I shared that on my podcast. I talked about on a social media podcast. So I'll forget which one that was, because I have a social media book as well called Social E-commerce. So
Is it also 1,000 pages?
No. That one's a little easier to read. It's, I think, under 300.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not quite as daunting. I even have an under 100-page book.
Wow.
So I have a third book. All these are published by O'Reilly, and that one's called Google Power Search. So that's a really easy read. That's how to find anything in Google.
Oh, cool.
Confidential business plans, forced research reports that normally cost thousands of dollars. It's all at your fingertips if you know the right search queries to type into Google.
Ooh, I got to get that book.
Yeah, it's really
cool.
helpful.
Yeah, we do that really does sound like an interesting book, especially for, for our team at Interview Connections, because one of our main skills is searching and finding podcasts, and there's thousands of them. And when you just go to iTunes or just Google podcasts in this niche, you'll see some, but then you got to search different ways and be creative with your searches. So that sounds like that book would help us then kind of search Google differently. So that's really cool. What was the name of that book again?
Google Power Search.
Google Power Search. Okay, awesome. And any last tips for people that are getting into podcasting, either as a host or a guest? What would be a couple of your tips for them?
Well, your website's really important. So if you can, especially in terms of your Google rankings, that's where you're going to get the visibility. It's not the iTunes presence or Stitcher or anything like that. It's your website. So make sure that you're not only getting, let's say you have a guest who's coming onto your show, get them to commit to blasting out to social media about them being on your show and all that, which is obvious, but also ask them to link to the episode from their website to your website.
Yeah. How do you handle that? How do you handle that ask? Because I've heard from some different people, they feel as a guest, they don't like when podcasters require them to do that up front. So how do you ask them to do that while still maintaining the respect of them being your guest? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So a great way to do this is to ask them kind of in the conversation, either before or after you're doing the recording.
So it's not when you schedule them, okay, you have to, in email, you have to do this. You wait till you're on and you have some rapport with them and it's a verbal ask. Okay, great. I like that a lot. Because most people are going to say yes, and tone is lost in email. So I like that you ask them on the call. That's great.
Yeah.
And that's so helpful. The backlinks I just did a video about, hey, one major benefit to doing podcast interviews is when you're a guest on someone's show, you have a backlink to your site, which you know that's great for SEO.
Yeah. So the best time to ask is either right before, during, or right after the episode has been recorded, but in that same session.
Yes.
And then the second best time is after you've noticed they haven't linked to you.
Yeah.
So anytime, right? So you can go back on all your previous guests, look to see, did any of them not link to me?
Yeah.
And then go and outreach to them and say, hey, I'd love for you to, I see you have a media page or a press page, and my podcast is really getting some traction. And I've been on TV. I've talked about the podcast on multiple, TV networks and so forth. I think it would be beneficial for you and for me if you included the episode on your media page or on your press page.
Absolutely. So I'm going to wrap this up here. What is your website, Stephan? Where can people find you online?
Yeah, so stephanspencer.com, which also links to my 2 podcast shows and includes a ton of resources around SEO and online marketing, social media marketing, etc. But then my 2 podcast show websites, I have the Optimized Geek website, which is optimizedgeek.com, and then Marketing Speak, which is marketingspeak.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for watching this. Thank you, Stephan, for being here. If you want to learn how to get guests for your podcast or work with us to be on shows, go to interviewconnections.com. Thanks for watching, everyone.